Whispers across stars, the diplomatic vessel horizon sliced through the iridescent atmosphere of Lumeria, its hull reflecting the planet's 3 moons like polished obsidian. Inside, diplomat Elian Novak adjusted his formal attire one final time, his fingers tracing the Earth Alliance insignia pinned to his chest. "Nervous?" asked Captain Reza, his security chief. Cautious, Elian corrected. "The Lumerians have rejected 17 alliance proposals in the last decade. Our presence here is unprecedented." The ship descended toward the crystalline capital city of Valeris, where structures grew organically from the planet's mineral-rich surface, spiraling upward like frozen fountains of light. Lumeria held the largest reserves of quantum crystals in the galaxy, essential for interstellar travel and precisely why Earth needed this alliance to succeed. "Remember," Reza said, "they're telepaths. Surface thoughts only." Leah nodded. His diplomatic training had included psychic shielding techniques, though reports suggested Lumerian abilities varied greatly among individuals. Some could merely sense emotions, while others could pluck thoughts from minds like ripe fruit. The reception hall resembled a massive geode, walls lined with pulsing crystals that shifted colors in harmony with the occupants' emotional states. Luminescent flora provided soft lighting, their tendrils swaying to an unfelt breeze. Dozens of tall, elegant Lumerians filled the space, their movements fluid like underwater dance. Queen Cirilla approached, her presence commanding immediate attention. Her skin shimmered with a deep amethyst hue, intricate patterns of bioluminescence flowing beneath the surface like constellations. "Diplomat Novak," she said, her voice melodic yet authoritative. "Lumeria welcomes Earth's envoy at last." Elian bowed. "The honor's ours, Your Majesty. Earth extends its hand in friendship and mutual prosperity." "Fine words," the Queen replied, a subtle smile playing at her lips. "But intentions matter more than words to my people." She gestured toward 3 figures standing nearby. "My daughters, Princess Vexia, Princess Marielle, and Princess Thalia." The eldest, Vexia, exuded confidence, her stance almost predatory as she assessed Elian with unabashed interest. Marielle, the middle daughter, offered a calculated smile that didn't reach her eyes, her fingers tracing patterns in the era Lumerian gesture of formal acknowledgement. But it was the youngest who captured Elian's attention. Princess Thalia stood slightly apart, her gaze downcast, her delicate purple skin several shades lighter than her sister's. Unlike the elaborate adornments of her family, she wore a simple attire that seemed to emphasize her desire for invisibility. "Our customs require your participation in the unity ceremony," the Queen continued. "You will choose one of my daughters as symbolic bond companion during your stay." Elian's diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this. "I wasn't informed of a recent addition," Vexia interjected, moving closer. "Given Earth's reputation for broken promises." As protocol demanded, Elian approached each princess. When he reached Thalia, he noticed her trembling slightly. She raised her eyes to meet his, and something electric passed between them. For a brief, disorienting moment, he felt as though he stood on the shores of Lake Michigan from his childhood, a memory he hadn't revisited in years. Thalia gasped,
stepping back.
The crystals nearest to them pulsed violet, then crimson. "Interesting," murmured Queen Cirilla, her eyes narrowing. That night, alone in his quarters, Leon reviewed the diplomatic briefings. Nothing explained what had happened with Princess Thalia. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, someone at his door. The princess herself stood in the corridor, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, "but I needed to warn you." "Warn me?" Delia glanced over her shoulder before meeting his gaze directly. "When you choose tomorrow, don't select me. For both our sakes." Before he could respond, she vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faint scent of night-blooming flowers and a lingering whisper in his mind. Some connections are forbidden for a reason. The bond ceremony, the grand crystal hall pulsed with anticipation, its vast ceiling refracting light into thousands of rainbow fragments across the assembled court. Elian stood at the center of a circular platform, surrounded by Lumerian dignitaries, whose whispers created a soft undercurrent of sound. The ceremonial garments they'd provided felt surprisingly comfortable, despite their alien design. A flowing robe with intricate circuitry, woven into the fabric that faintly hummed against his skin. Queen. Sorella entered with her 3 daughters in procession. Each princess wore ceremonial attire that accentuated their unique qualities. Vexia in bold crimson with sharp, geometric patterns. Marielle in shimmering azure adorned with diplomatic symbols of past alliances. And Thalia in simple lilac, her delicate purple skin complemented by minimal ornamentation, making her appear both ethereal and vulnerable. The bond ceremony dates back 10 millennia, announced the queen, her voice resonating through the hall. When a foreign emissary seeks alliance with Lumeria, they must choose a royal guide, a symbolic bridge between worlds. This bond, while ceremonial, represents the trust between our peoples. Ambassador Kellen, Earth's senior diplomat who had arrived overnight, leaned toward Elian and whispered, "Choose wisely." Intelligence suggests Vexia has the queen's ear in military matters. An advantageous connection, Leon nodded, though his eyes drifted to Thalia. Despite her warning the previous night, he couldn't shake their strange connection. She stood with eyes downcast, as though trying to make herself invisible. Diplomat Novak called the queen. "Step forward and make your selection." The hall fell silent as Elian walked along the line of princesses. Vexia smiled confidently. Marielle offered a calculating nod. But when he reached Thalia, she finally raised her gaze to meet his. In that instant, he felt it again, that strange resonance. Like a door opening in his mind. "Please," her voice whispered directly into his thoughts. "Don't choose me. It will only bring pain." But something deeper than diplomacy guided him as he extended his hand. "I choose Princess Thalia." Collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The crystals in the hall pulsed with surprised energy, shifting from serene blue to startled amber. Queen Sorella's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Unexpected choice," she said. "Nevertheless, the diplomat has selected. Let the bonding commence." Talia's hand trembled as she placed it in Elian's. 2 attendants approached, carrying a crystal sphere that glowed with internal light. As it was placed between their joined hands, the crystal flared brilliantly, far more intensely than protocol suggested was normal. "Remarkable affinity," murmured an elder Lumerian, loud enough for nearby courtiers to hear. "Most unusual for an off-worlder." When the light subsided, a faint pattern had appeared on both their wrists, a delicate, luminescent symbol that seemed to shimmer just beneath the skin. "The bond is formed," declared the queen, though her voice carried an edge of concern. "May it serve both our worlds." Later, during the celebration feast, Leon found himself separated from Thalia. As diplomats and officials bombarded him with questions and thinly veiled assessments, Ambassador Kellen cornered him by a refreshment table, his expression severe. "What were you thinking?" "Vexia has the military connections we need for the defense pact." "I made a judgment call," Ilian replied calmly, though his eyes scanned the room for Thalia. "Based on what?" "The shy one barely speaks in court." Before Elian could respond, a sharp pain lanced through his temple, accompanied by a flood of foreign emotion, fear, not his own. Instinctively, he turned toward a side corridor, where he glimpsed Thalia being confronted by her sister Vexia, whose fingers gripped Thalia's arm with obvious force. "Excuse me," Elian said. Moving away from the bewildered ambassador, he found them in a secluded alcove. Vexia speaking in hushed but harsh tones. "Endangering everything with your foolishness. If they discover what you truly are, is everything all right?" Elian interrupted. Vexia released her sister's arm immediately, composing her features into a diplomatic smile. "Family matters. Diplomat Novak. Nothing that concerns Earth." As she glided away, Talia rubbed her arm, her eyes meeting Elian's with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "You shouldn't have chosen me," she whispered. "The bond, it's stronger than it should be. They'll notice." "Notice what?" Talia glanced around nervously before taking his hand. The moment their skin connected, Elian felt a rush of sensation, her emotions flowing into him like a current, carrying fragments of thoughts and memories not his own. "This," she said, her voice barely audible, "true empathic bonding is forbidden with off-worlders. If they discover I'm a resonant, a what? Meet me at the Eastern Gardens after midnight," she said, releasing his hand. "I'll explain everything then." As she slipped away, the mark on Elian's wrist pulsed with gentle light. A constant reminder of a connection he didn't understand, but already couldn't imagine breaking. Hidden frequencies, the bioluminescent gardens of the Eastern Palace Quadrant seemed alive with consciousness. Floating orbs of light drifted between exotic flora that responded to proximity by changing colors and emitting soft musical tones. Elian navigated the winding paths. Following the subtle pull he felt through the bond mark on his wrist, he found Thalia in a secluded grotto surrounded by tall crystal formations that seemed to absorb sound, creating a pocket of privacy. Her delicate purple skin appeared silvery in the ambient light, her eyes reflecting the constellations visible through the garden's transparent dome. "You came," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "You didn't think I would? I thought perhaps your diplomatic sensibilities might prevail over curiosity," Elian smiled. "In my experience, diplomacy often requires following intuition as much as protocol." She gestured for him to sit beside her on a bench formed from living crystal. When he did, she took a deep breath before speaking. "Lemurians are telepathic, as you know, but our abilities vary greatly. Most can sense only surface emotions, or project simple thoughts with physical contact." She hesitated. "I'm what my people call a resonant and evolutionary divergence that appears once every few generations, and that means I don't just read thoughts. I form connections, deep ones. I experience others' emotions as my own, access memories, form mental bonds that persist across distance." Her fingers unconsciously traced the mark on her wrist. "It's why I'm kept away from court affairs. My abilities make many uncomfortable." Elian considered this. "So when we met, I felt your mind immediately. It was different from touching a Lumerian consciousness. More vivid, more compatible." She looked away. "Resonants are strictly forbidden from bonding with off-worlders. The last who did, centuries ago, caused a diplomatic crisis that nearly led to war. Why? Because the bond becomes something more than symbolic. It grows, deepens. Eventually, it can't be broken without double quotes," she trailed off. "Without what?" "Without causing harm to both bonded individuals. The last pair who were forcibly separated both died within days." She looked directly at him now, her eyes intense. The ceremony was supposed to create only a surface connection. But somehow, with you, a sudden rustling from nearby foliage interrupted her. Thalia tensed, pulling Elian deeper into the shadow of a large crystal formation. A palace guard passed by, scanning the gardens with a handheld device. "Security has been increased," she whispered when the guard had moved on. "Minister Draven, my mother's chief advisor, has always been suspicious of off-worlders. He opposed the alliance from the beginning. Do you think he suspects something about us?" "I don't know," but she stopped abruptly, her eyes widening as she placed her hand over the bond mark. "Someone's coming. Someone who knows about us." Before Elian could respond, a figure emerged from behind a crystalline structure, Princess Marielle, her calculating eyes taking in the scene with evident satisfaction. "Such a touching rendezvous," she said, her melodic voice carrying an undercurrent of threat. "Imagine the court's reaction to learn that our reserved little Thalia has formed a true empathic bond with a human." Thalia stood, positioning herself between Elian and her sister. "What do you want, Marielle?" "Originally, to understand why he chose you." She circled them slowly. "Now I see. You've been using your abilities illicitly, haven't you? Influencing his decision?" "That's not true," Elian interjected. "She actually warned me not to choose her." Marielle laughed softly. "How charmingly naive you are, diplomat. My sister's abilities make her dangerous, a fact our mother has conveniently ignored for too long. You've always resented me," Thalia said quietly. I've always recognized the threat you pose, Mariel corrected. And now, you've compromised yourself with this human. When Minister Draven learns of this, you would jeopardize the alliance. Ilian asked, stepping forward. Over what appears to be a personal vendetta? Mariel's smile didn't reach her eyes. The alliance will proceed after my sister is removed from the equation and a more suitable bond is established. Perhaps even with me. The mark on Elian's wrist burned suddenly, and he felt a surge of Thalia's emotion sphere mixed with resolve. You have until tomorrow's council meeting to break this bond voluntarily, Mariel continued. After that, I take this information to Minister Draven. She turned to leave, then paused. And Thalia, even you can't survive a forced separation from a bond this strong. Choose wisely. She disappeared into the garden. Thalia collapsed onto the bench, her face in her hands. She's right, she whispered. The bond is already too deep. I can feel your thoughts, your memories, even your dreams. Leanne knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his. Then you know I'm not going to abandon you or this connection. Shh. She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You don't understand. If Draven learns what I am, what we've done, he'll use it as proof that humans can't be trusted, that we manipulated you. Then we need to find a way to prove him wrong. Elian's diplomatic mind was already racing through possibilities. There must be precedent. Historical examples of successful bonds. There's only one place that might have such records, Thalia said, her expression shifting to one of determination. The ancestral archives beneath the temple. But they're forbidden to all but the highest priestesses, Leon smiled. Fortunately, I happen to be quite good at negotiating access to restricted areas. It's for the first time since he'd met her. Delia laughed to sound like crystal chimes that seemed to make the garden itself brighten in response. The sensation echoed through their bond, a shared moment of joy amidst looming danger. Tomorrow then, she said, her fingers intertwining with his. We'll need to be careful. Mariel will be watching, as if to emphasize her point. The mark on their wrists pulsed in unison, a visible reminder of what now connected them, a bond that transcended diplomatic ceremony and threatened to change both their worlds forever. Part 4. The celestial storm-shortened version Crimson Light broke over Lumeria as three moons aligned in the rare Trinity convergence. From his quarters, Elian watched the crystalline city vibrate with unusual energy while strange clouds gathered on the horizon. Ambassador Kellen entered with grave news. The convergence creates radiation that amplifies psychic phenomena. Today's negotiations are postponed. A royal messenger soon summoned Elian to the Queen's Emergency Council, where tension filled the air. Queen Cirilla sat centered among her daughters and ministers, with the suspicious Minister Draven at her side. The celestial storm grows stronger than any in history, the Queen explained, gesturing to a holographic vortex swirling in the atmosphere. It's creating a quantum resonance with our planet's crystal core. The storm threatens our psychic network, Draven added. Citizens report uncontrolled emotional projections and telepathic interference. What does this mean for our alliance? Elian asked, maintaining diplomatic focus. Alliance. Princess Vexia laughed bitterly. We may not have a civilization by nightfall. Queen explained their ancestors had built a royal harmonic chamber beneath the temple to redirect such energies, but it required a resonant to serve as conduit. A theoretical solution, Draven insisted. We haven't confirmed a true resonant exists in the royal lineage. I volunteer, Thalia said quietly, cutting through the debate. I am a resonant. Mother has protected my secret, but I won't hide while our people suffer. Draven's eyes narrowed. An untrained resonant could make the situation worse.
What?
I'm not untrained. Mother has prepared me since childhood. Outside, the storm intensified. Crystal fixtures began to vibrate discordantly. We have no choice, Vexia conceded, surprisingly supporting her sister. There's another factor, Draven said coldly, turning to Ilian. Princess Thalia has formed an unauthorized empathic bond with the human diplomat. The accusation shocked the council. Is this true? The Queen asked. The ceremony created an unexpected resonance, Elian admitted carefully. A tremor shook the chamber as the storm expanded over half the capital. Thalia will attempt stabilization, the Queen declared. Diplomat Novak will remain under guard. Thalia stood firmly. I need him with me. The bond will help stabilize me. Another stronger tremor showered crystal fragments onto the council table. Bring them both to the chamber. Now. They descended into ancient tunnels of raw, humming crystal. The harmonic chamber was a perfect sphere carved from a single massive crystal. With a platform at its center, surrounded by floating resonators, the chamber illuminated in response to Thalia's presence. It recognizes you, the Queen whispered. Thalia stepped onto the platform and extended her hand toward Elian. I need him with me. The Queen nodded. When they touched, the chamber's light intensified tenfold. The storm reaches critical threshold, Draven warned. Begin now. Thalia closed her eyes, channeling energy through the chamber's network. Through their bond, Elian felt thousands of Lumerian minds connected in a psychic web now fraying under the storm's assault. The chamber vibrated with harmonic tones as Thalia's purple skin glowed with pulsing light. Something's wrong, the Queen said in alarm. The energies are feeding back into her. It's the bond creating a secondary resonance pattern, Mariel realized. Break the connection, Draven commanded. No. Elian tightened his grip. Breaking it now would destroy her mind. Instead, Elian opened himself fully to their bond, allowing his consciousness to merge completely with Thalia's. The pain was overwhelming as foreign thoughts flooded his mind. But he found Thalia's brilliant core amidst the chaos. Together, they redirected the storm's energy through the chamber's network. Above the city, the destructive vortex transformed into a spectacular aurora dancing across Lumeria's sky. When Elian opened his eyes, he and Thalia knelt on the platform, still clasping hands. Everyone stared in astonishment. Impossible, Draven whispered. Thalia met Elian's gaze with new confidence. Not impossible, she said firmly. Just unprecedented. Through their strengthened bond, a single thought passed between them. What have we become? Beyond boundaries, the capital city of Valeris glittered under the light of 3 setting moons, its crystal spires catching and refracting the fading illumination into cascades of color. From the high balcony of the Royal Observatory, Lian watched citizens celebrate in the streets below. The celestial storm had passed, leaving Lumerian society not just intact but transformed. They're calling it the Great Harmony, Thalia said, joining him at the railing. Stories of what happened in the chamber have spread throughout the planet. In the weeks since the crisis, their bond had stabilized into something neither human nor Lumerian science could fully explain. They no longer experienced the disorienting flood of each other's thoughts. Instead, sharing a comfortable awareness, like knowing someone was in the next room without needing to see them. Your sister Vexia suggested they might build a statue, Elian remarked with a smile. Vexia has always had a flair for the dramatic. Thalia's own smile faded slightly. The council meeting begins soon. Are you ready? Before he could answer, the observatory door opened to admit Ambassador Kellen, whose expression suggested he'd aged years in the past week. The Earth's delegation has arrived, he informed them stiffly. President Chen is quite interested in meeting the diplomat who merged consciousness with an alien princess to save her world. Elian suppressed a laugh at Kellen's obvious discomfort. Tell him I'll be honored to explain the unique diplomatic techniques they didn't cover at the academy. When Kellen departed, Thalia turned to Elian, her expression serious. My mother will propose the formal alliance today. With both planetary leaders present, the terms will be finalized. But the question of us remains unresolved, Elian noted. Their unique bond presented unprecedented complications. Earth authorities had initially reacted with alarm to reports of one of their diplomats forming a psychic connection with an alien royal. Similarly, conservative elements of Lumerian society, led by Minister Draven, continued to cite ancient prohibitions against such bonds. My mother has been researching the oldest archives, Thalia said. She believes she's found a precedent, not a prohibition, but a prophecy. A prophecy. That seems convenient. Thalia's expression remained solemn. Lumerians don't view time as linearly as humans do. What you call prophecy, we might call echoes of potential futures reaching backward. The Grand Council chamber had been transformed for the historic meeting. Earth's delegation occupied one side, their formal blue uniforms contrasting with the flowing, iridescent garments of the Lumerians opposite. At the center, Queen Cirilla and President Chen sat facing each other across a crystalline table that hovered slightly above the floor. Eliane and Talia entered together, causing a momentary hush in the ongoing introductions. Through their bond, Eliane sensed hundreds of eyes upon them, some curious, some suspicious, some hopeful. The formal proceedings began with traditional exchanges and acknowledgments of both worlds' customs. When the time came to address the alliance terms, President Chen spoke directly. The incident with the celestial storm has demonstrated both the potential benefits and risks of our species' interaction. He stated. Earth is prepared to establish the resource exchange and defensive pact as discussed, but we require assurances regarding psychic boundaries. Minister Draven stepped forward. A reasonable concern. The bond between diplomat Novak and Princess Thalia represents an anomaly, one that should be studied carefully under controlled conditions. Dahlia tensed beside Eliane, and he felt her alarm through their connection. If by controlled conditions you mean separation and experimentation, Eliane said clearly, previous cases suggest such an attempt would prove fatal to both of us. The diplomat speaks truth, Queen Cirilla intervened. Moreover, our ancient archives reveal this is not without precedent. And a holographic projection appeared above the table, an ancient Lemurian script alongside images that depicted pairs of beings, one Lemurian and one distinctly different. Surrounded by symbolic representations of mental connection, the ancestral records speak of the twofold bridge, rare bonds that form between resonance and compatible non-Lumerian minds, Queen explained. Far from being forbidden, these connections were once considered sacred harbingers of evolutionary advancement. Convenient interpretations of obscure texts, Draven muttered, though not quietly enough. I have personally verified the translations, the Queen responded sharply. These bonds were feared and suppressed during the isolation era, precisely because they threatened the xenophobic policies of that time. President Chen studied the projections with scientific interest. And these bonds resulted in what exactly? Enhanced communication between species, the Queen said, deeper understanding, and, eventually, biological adaptations that benefited both peoples. A murmur ran through both delegations. Eliane sensed Thalia's surprise. This was information even she hadn't known. What manner of adaptations? Asked Earth's chief scientist. Subtle alterations in neural architecture that facilitated greater cross-species empathy, the Queen replied. Over generations, descendants of bonded pairs developed natural abilities to bridge cultural and biological differences. You're suggesting an evolutionary advantage, President Chen noted. I'm suggesting that what has happened between Princess Thalia and diplomat Novak may represent not an aberration to be feared, but a potential path forward for both our species. The implications hung in the air. Thalia's hand found Eliane's under the table, their bond marks glowing softly at the contact. We stand at a crossroads, Thalia said, speaking publicly for the first time in the proceedings. All eyes turned to her. We can retreat into fear of difference, or we can embrace the possibility that our separateness has always been more illusion than reality. Pretty words, Draven countered. But emotional idealism makes poor policy. On the contrary, President Chen interjected, surprising everyone. The foundation of any lasting alliance must be emotional as well as practical. Earth's history has taught us that repeatedly. He stood, addressing both delegations. I propose an amendment to our alliance terms. The bond between diplomat Novak and Princess Thalia will be recognized as legitimate diplomatic union, with all associated rights and protections under both Lumerian and Earth law. The chamber erupted in voices, some protesting, others expressing support. Through their connection, Eliane and Thalia shared a moment of stunned hope. Furthermore, President Chen continued, when the noise subsided, I propose the establishment of a joint research initiative to study the potential benefits of such connections, with the full and informed consent of the participants. Queen Cirilla's eyes met her daughter's across the chamber, a silent understanding passing between them. Lumeria accepts these terms, she declared, with the additional provision that Princess Thalia and diplomat Novak serve as official ambassadors of this new initiative. The formal signing proceeded with ceremonial gravity, but Elian barely registered the details. Through their bond, he and Thalia were engaged in a more intimate exchange. "Did you know this would happen?" he asked silently. "No more than you did," came her response, tinged with wonder. "But I hoped." Later, as Lumeria's moons rose once more over the city, they stood alone in the palace gardens where they had first shared their secret. The bioluminescent flora responded to their presence, creating a private symphony of light and gentle music. Ambassador Thalia, Elian said, testing the new title. "It suits you," as does Ambassador Novak. She turned to face him, her purple skin luminous in the moonlight. "Though I admit I'm more interested in exploring our other new designation. Legitimate diplomatic union," smiled. "I believe Earth would call that a marriage. Lumeria would call it soul-binding." Her fingers traced the now permanent mark on his wrist. "Either way, it suggests a rather long-term arrangement. I find myself quite comfortable with that prospect." He drew her closer, though I suspect we've only begun to discover. What this bond truly means, through their connection, flowed, not just thoughts, but a depth of emotion that transcended words, the certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, neither would face them alone. Above them, the three moons of Lumeria aligned once more, not in the rare configuration that had brought crisis, but in the more common pattern Lumerians called the lover's crown. As their lips met, the garden around them responded with a spectacular display of synchronized light, as if the very planet celebrated the boundary that had been crossed and the new world of possibility that now lay before them. In diplomatic chambers and royal halls across two worlds, representatives would continue to debate the implications of their union. Scientists would study the unprecedented neural patterns their bond had created. Historians would re-examine ancient texts with new understanding. But here, in this moment, existed the simple truth that had always underpinned the greatest advances of both species. Connection was not something to fear, but to embrace even, or perhaps especially, when it led beyond the boundaries of what either world had imagined possible